In this practice plan, we aim to improve the player's ability to receive shots that land low and close to the net. This short ball defense situation is important in stage 1 as players often hit short as a result of their inexperience in controlling the ball. Similarly, as players progress from red to orange and from orange to green, they must learn to effectively cover the longer court. We will improve the player's performance in this situation in 3 ways. 1. By teaching the player to switch to and use the Continental grip in order to open their racket face and catch and carry the ball back over the net. 2. By helping the player to recognize incoming short balls as early as possible. And 3. By giving the player an effective tactical target for this situation. If this practice is effective, we should see the player implement the Continental grip and the catch and carry feeling in competition, as well as more effectively receive short and low bouncing balls. Before beginning, introduce the player to the Continental grip. The Continental grip can be found by drawing a line from the base knuckle of the index finger to the heel of the hand, and then placing that line on the second diagonal bevel of the handle as shown in the picture. The grip should feel to the player as though they are holding a hammer, and the V between their index finger and their thumb should be in line with the side of the racket, not the face. This should be the same grip used on the serve and likely on the bottom hand of the backhand as well. In this drill, the player and the coach begin on opposite sides within arm's length of the net. One player balances the ball on top of the net and then taps the net with their racket, causing the ball to fall to one side. The players then play in the service box or boxes using the Continental grip. The players must allow the ball to bounce before hitting it and are not allowed to swing down. Next, the player and the coach move back to the service line and rally using only the Continental grip. The player counts how many shots they can make in a row without missing. Finally, players repeat the previous exercise. However, this time the coach hits the ball short and low. After receiving the ball, the player must touch the service line before they can hit their next shot. After the short court warm-up, the player is introduced to the practice situation. Ask the player to try and complete the situation statement. When the ball comes short and low, we want to defend by so that both the coach and player move to opposite baselines. The coach feeds the ball short and low and then rallies with the player, mixing between short and deep balls, with the player counting how many shots they can make in a row without missing. The coach should hit to the player's forehand and backhand sides. Give the player several attempts before progressing. After exploring the situation, ask the player the following questions and discuss their answers. Mark the direction lanes as shown with cones or lines. Revisit the completed situation statement and introduce the tool, in this case, the Continental grip and the catch and carry feeling, by showing the player the following video example. Ask the player the tool-specific discussion questions, then introduce the tool using the following progression. In the first exercise, the player begins on the baseline in the ready position, with the coach standing several feet away facing them. The coach holds two balls at shoulder height and then drops one, with the player running forward to catch it. The player should be balanced while catching the ball and catch in a stance resembling a split squat or lunge. The player should not fall through the catch or take additional braking steps after catching. The coach should challenge the player and aim for a 3-to-1 success to failure rate. Next, the coach demonstrates the grip change from the ready position grip, which is usually a forehand grip, to the Continental grip using the non-dominant hand to rotate the racket, and then allows the player to practice this motion. The player repeats the previous exercise, this time with their racket, moving to and catching the ball on the hitting side face of the racket. The player can begin in the Continental grip, but after several attempts should progress to starting with the racket held in their forehand grip, switching to the Continental grip as they move forward. As before, the player should move and catch with stability. The coach moves across the net, standing halfway between the service line and the net. The coach now racket feeds the ball to the player, who switches to the Continental grip before moving up and bumping the ball across court, aiming to keep the ball outside of the direction lane. The coach should drop the ball before hitting it so that the player can time their split step accurately. Next, repeat the previous drill, this time feeding from the baseline. The coach now rallies with the player, as in the situation exploration game. However, the player should continue to switch to and use the Continental grip when the coach hits the ball short. The player counts the number of shots they make in a row. If the player hits the short ball outside of the diagonal direction lane, they receive 2 points towards their streak instead of 1. Record the player's highest streak. Finally, the coach and players play regular games with serve and return, with the coach mixing in short balls. The player calls out up as soon as they recognize that the ball will land short. If the player makes X number of shots in a row without missing, they win the point, regardless of the actual outcome. Continue to watch for and reinforce the use of the Continental grip in future practices and matches. Compare the player's streak to previous streaks and look for improvement. Ask the player to consider other ways of dealing with short and low balls other than hitting the ball back deep and cross court.